Morena. It's great to see so many people on the screen. Kei te mihi kia koutou, e hui tahi nei kei te whakarewatia tēnei kaupapa whakahirihira. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'll redo our karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he teo he huka, he hauhu, te hei mauri ora. Nō reira, welcome, and I hope that all of you have endured the last couple of days in good spirits, and that your whānau are well, and that it's a big, I was quite taken with the Prime Minister's comments last night after the rather large earthquake in Wellington, in which he asked where the plague of locusts were. So, I'm going to hand over to Makarena, who has really been to some extent at the epicenter of the cyclone Gabrielle, as she's moved up right up the north, and has really experienced much more than I have, being based in Wellington. So kia ora, Makarena, and good to know that you had a good night's sleep.
Kia ora, Teresa. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, i ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā karangaranga maha, tēnā koutou, tēnā hoki tātou katoa. And once again, I'd like to express my sentiments and best wishes to those who have been impacted by the conditions of the last few days. And I just hope that you're getting the support that you need, and that things will come right for you as soon as possible. Here in the far north, it's been quite dramatic, quite scary, and we have for the last 2 or 3 days, by and large, been off grid. So very little to do when you don't have internet or phone connection. But I've been able to keep myself busy with housekeeping and stuff, which was quite a novelty. Anyway, so looking forward to today's kōrero, to reporting to you on what the mahi that we have done from the Dementia Mati Wareware Advisory Leadership and Advisory Group, and looking forward to getting your feedback. So far, in terms of the survey, I think it appears that we're on the right track, but we'll be working through that. So yeah, just welcome again, and looking forward to the next hour and a half kōrero. So Teresa, will we work here through the next item on the agenda, which is the explanation of the terms?
Makarena, it's Shireen here. Sorry, we just have some technical information.
Oh yes, of course.
That they need to get,
yes,
so that they know how the meetings, they need to participate in the meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So if that's all right with you, Teresa, we'll hand over to Shireen and her co-technical partner to explain a little bit of housekeeping for us.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Makarena and Teresa. And just for those who are new to the network, Makarena and Teresa are the co-chairs of the New Zealand Dementia Mati Wareware Governance Leadership and Advisory Group. And I'm Shireen Maloney. I'm the Chief Executive of the New Zealand Dementia Foundation, and we're the Secretariat for the governance ecosystem, which you're a part of by being part of the network. And as Macarena and Teresa said, congratulations for being here today. We're really grateful. We know everyone is doing it very tough. And we know that many people who registered for the meeting can't attend because of connectivity issues. And we'd normally defer the meeting until that's settled down. But the advice to the commissioners for the budget 2022 funding projects must be with them mid-February. So we need to complete this process today. But those who can't make it to the meeting, they did have a chance to respond to the survey, and we're also recording the meeting, so we'll post it on the ecosystem website, and people can attend and view it online later if they want to. And there'll be a lot of information from Macarena and Teresa today, so you know, let people know if they couldn't attend that they can pick that up from there. The meeting today is in two parts. The first part, Macarena and Teresa will discuss the leadership group's draft advice and the feedback from the survey. And in the second part, we're going to make a start on the communities of interest that you've let us know that you want to have. Now, those of you who were at the November network meeting, you'll remember Stephen Jacobs, who facilitated the discussion at that meeting. Stephen will be helping us with the breakout rooms in the second part of this meeting, and he also has some information that's important for your full participation in the meeting today. Stephen.
Kia ora koutou. While the chairs are presenting their information, if you have questions, please put them into the chat. Now, if you don't know how to get to the chat, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll either see chat or you'll see more. And if you go into more, you'll see something that says chat, and that's a chat room. And so can you please write your questions into the chat? When the chairs have finished, there will be some time for us to talk about those questions. And what I'll do is I'll just start at the top and ask those people who've written their questions to speak them to the chairs. We'll only have 10 minutes, but what this means is that your questions will be recorded and they can be followed up later. So I hope that's really clear. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see something that says chat or it says more. And if you click on more, you'll see chat there, and then you can write in the chat room. I think part of my role is to, at some point, ask the chairs to stop talking if they've been going on for hours. So that we have enough time for the questions. And at the end of the questions, you will be going into breakout rooms based on communities of interest, and we'll talk about that at the time. Back to you, Shireen.
Yes, what Stephen's referring to is we've got a very tight schedule for the meeting. We've got to get through a lot. So, you know, we're going to keep to the time frame. So we'll just remind people gently that we need to do that all the way through. You will also need to, you are muted at the moment. Everyone is muted except for the person who's talking. And you'll need to unmute when Stephen lets you know that it's time for you to ask your question. So Teresa and Macarena, we can start that session.
Should I go through the Māori terms that we've come up with?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Hand
yes.
over to you. So, I mean, it's all quite self-explanatory in the program and the agenda. We have, in keeping with our commitment to Tiriti o Waitangi and us as New Zealanders, we have come up with the terms Te Whakaruru Hau mo Te Mate Wareware for the Dementia Mate Wareware Leadership and Advising Group. Whakaruru Hau means advise, to advise, but also to shelter, protect, and to have authority. So we had a kōrero about this and can deem this to be a very apt and appropriate translation. Te tūhononga, or te mate wareware, te tūhononga means to collect, a collective, a network. So once again, really appropriate for the Dementia Mate Wareware network, which is all you guys. So those are the terms that we've come up with. I'm going to actually pass over to Teresa. I've had difficulty accessing the slides and so forth in the last few days. So Teresa is a lot more informed than I am at this moment. So Teresa, I'll just hand back to you.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Apai, kia ora.
Kia ora. Could Bevan, could you put up the slides? So this is our draft advice. So the network and the leadership group, Te Whakaruru Hau, mō te wareware, Te Mati Wareware, have had the opportunity to draft some advice, and we sent out a survey to you, the network, to ask what you thought of that. And in the main, the advice was very supportive of where we, the leadership group and advisory group, had landed, which was really helpful. Could we go to the next slide? So what the projects were. So this money came out from a budget decision by ministers in 2022, and they set aside $12 million to support some projects that were part of the Dementia Mati Wareware Action Plan. So the money will be spent over 4 years, so 12 million spent over 4 years, and the government has indicated what the focus of the projects are. So they've set out what the amount of money, how long it will last, and what the projects will deliver on. So the projects are support, navigation, and respite. So we have been, the Dementia Leadership and Advisory Group have been invited to provide some advice about the commissioning. And really it's about the principles. So what do we think? We, both you and us, you as the network, and really understanding what's needed for the community, for the people who have dementia and their whānau. And we need to finalise that advice in a couple of weeks. So interestingly, at the beginning of the year, Te Whatuora and Te Akawhai came to the leadership group and said, look, we've decided that we want to make sure that the commissioning process, or the process whereby people, providers, put in a notice that they're going to, they want their projects to be funded. We need to make sure that everybody can participate in it. So they landed on a two-stage process. So an invitation to register interest in ROI, and it's not hugely onerous. And then there's an invitation to a shortlist based on that ROI and the evaluation to submit a full proposal. So it's a two-way process, and the purpose was to really get enable a wide group of people to put forward their interest in putting in a proposal. So how we got here, so we had the first network hui, we've had leadership meetings, and we've got sent out the network survey, which the survey was about, this is what we think the advice should be to commissioners. So some of the feedback came back with, I'm concerned that they're just 4 priority groups of projects when there's so much need. And I'm worried you'll be too rigid, and I'm worried about separating out whānau. So I just want to pick up on the 4 priority areas for the projects. So they were really set by government. And when government decided that this was the money that was going to, they made a budget call in 2022. They clearly said who the priority groups were. And where our advice has been saying, no, we can't be too rigid, and certainly the two-stage process, we hope is going to be a much more enabling process. And with respect to separating whānau from individuals or people with the person with dementia, our approach, the leadership and advisory group's approach, is It's an and approach. You cannot separate individuals from their whānau. They both matter. So these are our highest priority recommendations. That commissioners should ensure that the application process is accessible. So use simple everyday language. And that should prioritise new projects so everyone has access to information and services regardless of their cultural identity, where they live or how old they are. Commissioners should prioritise projects that show that the organisation has partnered with people with lived experience and their supporters in the planning. And we recommend should prioritise projects that show they explicitly address each of the 5 principles of the Tiriti o Waitangi. So as a system, we have a tendency to make very high level statements, but we forget about what that means in the implementation and the actions that need to be put in place. So we're keen that this is explicit. And that the commissioner should prioritise projects that show that they will evaluate outcomes related to improvement in quality, well-being and equity. And equity, we're clear that equity includes equity in eligibility, access, uptake and outcomes. So it's not a narrow view about equity. And commissioners should prioritise projects that aim to confer direct benefits to people living with dementia and to their family and others and their whānau. And so that this again talks to that and approach.
Can I just interrupt there, Teresa? It's just about the volume. It's not great for me. I don't know about anybody else. It's okay, but are you able to turn your volume up at all?
Yes. Yeah. How is that better?
Shireen, are you having a problem, Shireen, with it? No, it's not a big problem, but it's just a bit of a strain.
I think it might just be a case of moving closer to the computer.
Yeah. Even that might help. Yeah.
Okay. Is that better?
Not really, but let's proceed.
Okay. All right. Next slide. And that the commissioners should prioritise projects that cover more than one of the 3 budget priority areas. So really looking like responding like a one-stop shop approach, and prioritise projects that show collaboration across providers, and prioritise projects that will lead to an increase in options. So this is particularly important for respite services projects. And then the next slide, the last couple are that bundle support. We think that they should bundle support to navigate dementia services with other post-diagnostic support. And this is particularly important for service navigation projects. And we're keen that commissioners should explore or prioritise projects that involve GP-based primary care and seeks to strengthen its involvement with people affected by dementia mati wareware. And we think this is particularly important for post-diagnostic support projects. So that's really the nuts and bolts of where we are with our
recommendations.
Our recommendations.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to find my plug. I note my computer appears to.
Can I just clarify while Teresa's doing that? Can I just clarify that what the leadership group did was in response to the feedback that came through in the survey, and particularly the concerns that people had about proposals missing out because they didn't have all of those elements in their proposals. The leadership group split the advice into two parts: high level recommendations, and then general recommendations. So high level recommendations are what all the proposals would expect to have in them, and general recommendations are these are recommended, but not all projects might have these elements in them. And those recommendations will be available on the website, so you'll be able to see them if you missed them in the meeting.
So we're very keen that the applications are accessible, and as we've said, uses language that is simple and straightforward, because and so we don't disadvantage those organisations or entities that maybe don't have as much experience in applying for funding, but we can see that, you know, that it might be a project worthwhile funding. So we really want to ensure that everybody has equal opportunity to seek funding.
Okay, very, very direct and clear communication. Thank you, guys. There's one question so far from Glenn. Glenn, would you like to ask your question of the chairs? You'll need to unmute yourself first.
Yeah, the question was just around whether these slides we've been looking at have been a further revision to the draft advice that we received, and I think that's just really been articulated in since I actually asked the question.
Okay.
That it has been by looks. Yep.
Okay.
We get
Catherine,
access to both of those pieces.
Good. Thank you. Catherine, you have a question.
Yes, thanks, Stephen, and kia ora, Teresa, for that introduction. I mean, you know, I think that the leadership group's done an excellent job of bringing together the things that are going to help to make this a success and make these pilots really make a difference for people with dementia Mate Wareware. The one thing that I think is in many of our minds is that $12 million over 4 priority population groups, over 3 project areas, over 4 years is, you know, it's a very, very small amount of money. And, you know, I can see that the group has given some thought to that in terms of the thinking about putting navigation, prioritising projects that put navigation and post-diagnostic support together. But do you have a view about, you know, like the optimal number of pilots that the commissioners should be looking at? Because one of the things here is making sure that the pilots are sustainable and therefore have the best chance of success over that period. So I know this is like the $64,000 question, really, isn't it? So, you know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Catherine. And we did have various conversations at the leadership and advisory group meeting precisely about that. That's why we were very keen to talk about collaboration. So evidence that people were, you know, the providers or the proposal actually was thinking more broadly out into the community and with other providers. We haven't landed on a number, but we are of the view, and we've certainly said to the commissioners precisely what you have said, Catherine, that it's a small bucket, and that we're really keen that whatever gets the go-ahead, that actually it can inform future investment. We don't think that, as you say, it's a small bucket, and that what we've got to learn from this is that what works.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree. I just took what you just said, Teresa, and of course, it is a drop in the bucket. And what we want to do is to be able to fund projects that are going to be successful and put us in good stead for further funding in the future. But how many that will be, we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, you're right. We didn't land on a number.
Okay, if you look at the chat, you'll see that Natasha's made a comment, so we won't come to you, Natasha, unless you want to speak. Are you happy for us to move on? I'll assume so, unless you speak. So moving on to Leonie has a question. Leonie, your question.
I was just wondering, because I deal a lot with our dementia clients and a lot with going into respite and into permanent care. And one of the issues I find is every area has a different legal framework, and it would be nice to have some consistency for those that are deemed not to have capacity when they have to go into a dementia setting for respite or a dementia setting for permanent care, which I know is the last option, but it is, I deal with this every day, and I just find that depending on what area the person is or what region, it's quite different. And in our area, nobody can go into a secure setting once they're deemed to have no capacity without either an EPOA or a triple PNR to act as the person in their best interest. I'm just wondering where that sits to protect these clients.
Makarena, I'll leave you to answer that. It's called a hospital pass.
Actually, I was going to defer to Anne, even though, yeah, because I know that you have a lot to, to say about respite care, and you have a lot of knowledge and information. Can you answer that, Anne?
My first thought was that the Law Commission is currently undertaking a review of decision making. And capacity and enduring power of attorney and so on and so forth. So I think certainly I would encourage people to access that review and to send their comments in. But look, in terms of the different criteria for different areas, I think that is a symptom of our health system that this new health system is seeking to address. So I think you're right. I think it is an issue, and we're certainly hopeful that when we see the new health system being put into effect, that some of those issues would hopefully in time be addressed. So I don't know that there is really a nice answer, a good answer to that question. I think it is an issue that does exist, and that we shouldn't. We have to acknowledge that it's there, but I don't think there's an easy answer.
Shireen here, just to clarify that Anne Schumacher from Dementia Wellington is a member of the leadership group, so she's answering from the leadership group perspective.
Sorry, thanks for that, Shireen. I didn't mean to mention that. Thank you, Anne.
A question from Kate.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Kate Calvert te Kolingua, from Department of Corrections, and it was just that nitty-gritty of when people apply for funding, are they allowed to apply for 4 years of funding or a year of funding? Will they be expected to apply again and again, or is that actually going to be one of those things that's a question asked and it could be any of the above? Because we know that to get things going and then to measure it takes time.
Yeah.
And we also know really well what works, actually. That was another point. We've got some really great examples of what works in dementia care too.
I think that so the budget, the detail around the budget clearly identifies that there will be some administrative funding for some of the projects. The funding will be for over 4 years. So it's definitely will be focused on that 4-year time period. And so there won't be the need, and we will certainly make that clear to the commissioners that we don't think that that's a good idea, particularly because of the fact that it's small, it is a small bucket of funding. And so those providers or who are successful need to have over that time period comfort that they're going to be able to continue what they're proposing to do over that time period. So year on year contracting won't, we will be advising that that cannot happen.
I'm not sure if we talked about projects that might only need less than 4 years. I don't recall having that conversation, but certainly we want projects to span that time that it needs to succeed, that it needs in order to show that, you know, it has been effective and that it works. So Teresa and do you recall projects that might be less than 4 years, whether that, no,
we didn't discuss that.
Decide, no.
No.
I could imagine, well, I don't know, but we'll come back and talk about that. I wouldn't imagine that we would rule those out.
I think it's not clear for the leadership group what the answer to that question, because that really sits with the commissioners.
Okay.
And as Macarena and Teresa have said, that hasn't been part of the discussions. No. The time frame, you know, for funding.
Yeah. Except that we know that the funding is over a 4-year period.
Yeah.
Now the next question is, I hope, from a person. It's number 200-610. So whoever you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yes.
It's Jenny Spears, and I'm a nurse in the community team in the Wellington region. And my question is about people accessing. In Wellington, you only get twice a day, perhaps 3 times a day, support in the community, and that's really hard for people. Another comment is about daycare as another form of respite, which is can only be accessed by using the by having a needs assessment. And my final thought is, are you going to look at reviewing whether the use of Interi is going to continue, or is that going to be reviewed?
The questions that you ask are sort of have not been part of our discussions around budget 2022.
Okay. And now to Bridget.
Hi, everybody. So my question relates to the focus on new projects for applications. Does that preclude the potential to fund existing projects that are currently underway? So, for example, I think in the younger onset dementia area, in many parts of the country, there are some really great day services being provided already, which are currently unfunded and rely on contestable grant funding. So would those sorts of existing projects be precluded from applying for this budget?
I would think that was not decided upon to preclude those that type of application. Not at all.
Okay, over to Paul.
Thanks, Stephen. My question is around health tech startups. Are health tech startups permitted to apply for funding to assist in the development of their solution? As we know, health tech innovation is growing and can add significant value in response to the key areas that are already mentioned.
Can you just clarify your question again, Paul?
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in response to the funding that's being, and apologies for the accent, I'm across the ditch. So a health tech startup permitted to apply for funding to assist in the development of their solution. As we know, health tech innovation is growing rapidly, and we've seen a number of solutions that add value to the key areas that have already been mentioned.
If the application around health tech funding, if it fits in within the priority areas, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm really keen on health tech innovation around dementia, mate wareware, and involved in it. And there was certainly no discussion around excluding that either. So, yeah.
And can I just add to that? What part of Paul's written question is, why are there no priorities on improving efficiency and accuracy of diagnosis? The government set the priority areas for this funding spend, and diagnosis wasn't included in that. However, diagnosis is a very big focus of this ecosystem work, and certainly the network and the leadership group will be focusing on that in our future work, but this year, because it's a priority area, but it wasn't part of the government's designated funding priorities.
Okay, we have time for just the last two questions. I think we've got a little bit of time there. Kendra.
Oh, kia ora. So I'm Kendra Sanders. I'm a Planning and Improvement Manager for the Central Region. I just wondered what the success criteria was going to look like for the pilots or projects, and will that be identified in the RFP process? And it probably relates a little bit, Catherine, to what you've said in the next question around who's going to be making or setting a framework for what success looks like for these, and are they going to be consistent? So if you had 3 respite projects, are they all going to be have the same criteria for what success looks like? Because I guess scalability is a huge issue. Implementation science, all of that stuff. There are issues around taking a small pilot and scaling it. So yeah, is that going to be who's informing that and at what stage?
So our advice, the advice that we're talking about today, that's going to go to the commissioners, has fairly high level, a fairly high level focus, and we expect them to take those into account and then think about how the RFP will deliver on those high level statements. So that's the first thing. Yes, we're absolutely, our role is to give the commissioners advice. We expect the commissioners will take our advice, will make a decision about whether they accept it, and that they will provide us with feedback as to why they did not or why they did, so that we're able to then share it with you. The next thing is that we, the leadership group, won't be part at all of the evaluation process, because we can't, because many of us have connections with the very kind of people who are going to put in projects. So we have to be, we have to be quite clear about where we as a leadership group sit in this process. But we're very clear, and the agencies have been very clear with us, that they will take our advice and they will provide us with feedback as to why they act on it or why they've not. And, yeah, go Kendra.
Thanks, Teresa. So could one of those high-level recommendations be then that the commissioners consult back with the advisory group around what success looks like or what good looks like? Because I guess you're the advisory group represents the big brains, and so in the commissioning space, do they have the depth of understanding around what good looks like or success looks like for those with dementia in their family whānau?
So we have had a discussion about that at the leadership group, and we were clear that in this initial process that would be part of the registration of interest, that would be part of. If you're going to register an interest in putting up a proposal, you had to be clear about what you were seeking to achieve. So that was one of the first things. And then the other thing about the RFP will then have to be much more clearer about what are the indicators that they are wanting, either indicators or outcomes, or the process by which those particular projects will be evaluated. So I think the points that you're making are very clear. We don't want to, the leadership group have been clear that they didn't want to get down so that we were prescribing, dot point by dot point, actually what each of these projects needed to do, but we were clear that we wanted to see that there were some outcomes that they were going to achieve. And the point that you're making about scalability and being able to go forward into the system in the long term is an important one.
Thank you. That's all the time we've got for questions, because we need to move on to the next part. The next part is about communities of interest. The idea of community, you are a community of interest, you are the national community of interest. But the communities of interest are about joining people with a passion for a topic together so that they combine the energy to make things happen. And so they're very, very important in this sort of work. And now Susan is going to explain how the communities of interest that we're going to look at now fit into the ecosystem.
When we were thinking about how to represent the Dementia Mati Wareware governance ecosystem, someone suggested the albatross or the toroa because it's a symbol of amazing navigation, and navigation is what the governance ecosystem is all about. It's about helping to form a clear path to a shared vision, and that vision is laid out in the Dementia Mati Wareware action plan. So our toroa, it has 4 long flight feathers at the end of the wings there, and they are what gives a bird lift, and they represent the 4 objectives of the action plan: reducing incidents, supporting people to live their best possible lives, building accepting and understanding communities, and strengthening leadership and capability. But what we heard really strongly in the first network meeting, and I think it was coming through with some of those questions as well, is that the network really wants to be confident that that navigation, that the decisions and the advice that is given is really strongly informed by an understanding of what is going on the ground. And this is one of the things that our communities of interest can really do. They can help to strengthen our backbone, the spine that represents the two-way flow of information that helps to connect and coordinate the whole. So that two-way flow between the head, the Dementia Mati Wareware Advisory Leadership and Advisory Group, and all of us here today, the wings, the network, with the many feathers that are needed to fly, with the many perspectives and voices that we need to hear. So the communities of interest are a way of drawing people together to help provide that insight about what is working well. As Kate said, there are things that are working well that we should be building on. And it's a way of drawing out what's in our hearts about what must change. So you can see that in the structure of today's meeting, it kind of reflects that idea of the two-way flow of information. Time for the leadership and advisory group to be able to share, and for the network to have that time to also be able to not only to ask questions, but also to provide insight. And that's where those groups are really hopefully going to come into play. And so that's the way that these meetings will be structured going forward. There'll be the time within each of the meetings for the communities of interest to be meeting together, to be strengthening and evolving and taking on a life of their own. And at least every 6 months, the network meeting will be turned over to the communities of interest to allow more time to share amongst the groups that are evolving inside. So today is just a really small first step. But you know what the motivational posters say, every great journey has to start with a first step.
Okay, so now Bevan's going to put up the slides and I'm going to talk about what's going to happen next and how we make this work. And we hope we can do this reasonably smoothly. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see something that says more. And if you go into more, you'll see at the bottom of it something that says breakout rooms. Bevan's going to put up the slide. So to join on the breakout rooms, you click on the breakout room bottom, at the bottom of your window. So you click on that, and then what you see is this, a number of choices: Māori perspectives, Pacifica, rural, young onset, dual diagnosis with lifelong, age residential care, respite care, navigation, community support, dementia-friendly communities, therapeutic approaches, and others. So what we'd like you to do, go back to that, sorry, Bevan. We'd like you to choose one of those and join it. Please, if there are too many in one group, see if you can decide on a second one that you're interested in. Ideally, because there's about 89 people here, there'd be about 10 people in each group, ideally.
Just to clarify, these are the groups that the survey, that your comments in the survey said that the network wanted to have. So that's why they exist.
Okay, so you choose a room and go to that one, and then next slide, Bevan. Basically, this is your meeting will not be recorded, and at the end of the time frame, you'll get a 1-minute message to say that basically the room has been closed, but you can leave the room earlier if you wish. We suspect you won't have a long time. You've only got 15 minutes, so which is not a long time. So in that time, we would like you to basically introduce yourselves, say basically one thing about you that you are very proud of in terms of the work you do. And then we'd like you to choose someone who's going to feed back to the group at the end. And what we want you to feed back is one thing that your group agrees would be the most important thing to do next to improve things. So part of the talk is about what's working well. Let's concentrate to start with on what's working well. Then one thing you'd like to see improved as soon as possible. And then the coordinator will come back and we're going to have a very quick feedback to Shireen, who will facilitate that part, about that, just that one thing. And you have less than a minute to say it. So you need to be very focused on that one thing that you're going to feed back. Is that all right? So I would try and say, no more than 5 minutes for the introductions, but you do need to have a sense of each other as a community of interest is built on people. And so you need to know a little bit about the people that you're working with. So who are you? What's your role? And what are you proud of in terms of the work that you do? What your organization does. Then what is working well in your particular area of interest, and what's the one thing that could happen next that would create an immediate improvement or start things moving in the right direction. And choose someone who will feed back. So what we'd like you to do now is to go into the breakout room, down to more, into the breakout rooms, open the breakout rooms and join one of those groups.
For those of you who don't want to go into a breakout room, that's fine. You can wait. That the breakout rooms, as Stephen said, will be going for about 15 minutes. They will come back at 11:10. We'll bring them back then. So you can wait online or you can come back into the meeting.
Can I suggest that if you're not sure, join the other, because they clearly don't know either. So join them and have a general conversation and just find out what you're all interested in.
Yes, we put up an other group for people who haven't decided what they want to work on, or just want to have a general conversation. That's right.
And now I hand over to Shireen, who's going to ask you about your feedback.
I hope you enjoyed getting together with all the people who share your interest in the particular Dementia Mata Wareware area. As Susan explained earlier, these communities of interest will continue as long as your group thinks it's needed. And the New Zealand Dementia Foundation will help coordinate the groups over time. They'll help coordinate that activity. As they develop over time, the vision for them is that the group members will work together to develop advice for the leadership group on that area of special interest, and also that the leadership group will be able to tap the special interest groups as subject matter experts if they need advice on a particular issue. Now I'll go through the list and ask of the special interest groups and ask the spokesperson from each group to feed back to the group. So would the person from the Māori perspectives like to do that?
Oh, kia ora, Shireen. We didn't actually elect anybody, but I'll speak. In terms of what works well for Māori, quite clearly it came through, was the connection to whānau, was the whānau unit. And, I found this when we were interviewing whānau right throughout the motu, that many whānau come together in times of adversity, and this is one occasion when that happens. And so the advantage is whānau can pool resources, they can come together and support each other. I guess it's a double-edged sword in that on the other hand, many of our Māori whānau are already struggling in terms of their financial situation. So there are socioeconomic issues that need addressing and need looking at. Many whānau don't have, well, as one of our members mentioned, there are a lot of whānau living with mati wareware who are in fact homeless. But even those who have home, many of them, the housing situation is not adequate in order to cope, in order to take care of the person living with mati wareware. There are other issues that are more important and more salient in terms of, in a whānau living with mati wareware, such as providing kai, putting kai on the table, providing clothing, like the basics of just living, which our whānau face day in and day out. And sometimes the requirements for the needs for mati wareware are just not on top of that priority list. So how do we improve this? What can we do now? Obviously, a lot of the funding is not distributed equitably amongst our community, and what we need and what we all need, I guess, is further funding, equitable funding for Māori whānau in order to be able to provide adequate care, not even optimal care, but premium care for any member living in their whānau living with mati wareware.
Thank you, Macarena. Obviously, there's so much work to do just to help people live well. and we're in the first part of that through the ecosystem at least. Would the person with Pacifica, from the Pacifica Perspectives Group, give us your headlines?
Can I just interrupt at this point and say that you all have to be headline conscious. So can you, or we're not all going to get a chance, or not every group will get a chance to speak. So can you please just give the headline of what you'd like to see improved?
There'll be lots of time to, feedback to the leadership group and the network over the months ahead, for sure.
Kia ora tātou, ko Neta Tomakino toku ingoa, noha moa hau, ngā mihi nui aroha I te whaia Macarena Dudley and Teresa Wall, mo te kaupapa o te wā, e whakakotahi nei tātou ki raro I te tuanui o tēnei hui. Maloso fōmau, malangi mā, Stephen, I acknowledge your sentiments about sentencer. Unfortunately, in Pacifica world, collectivism for us is we don't do one sentences. And if you're asking us, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be absolutely honest. And I'm not, we didn't get a chance to really select, but in our lovely hui, with Luana, Wendy and Amy in the Pacifica space. So I'm not going to say that I'm the expert either, but it just happened to be that I happened to be talking at the time. And so the sisters have appointed, or just for this time and this kaupapa in this moment, to speak. So malo le sa'ili malo le finau, malo le tawivi. Keep this mahi going. Now, in terms of a diagnosis, now when we spoke just briefly, we felt that what's not working, well, echoing whai Macarena. You know what? We know what's right for our whānau because, we're the ones living it. So immediately after these huis, I'm going straight back to be a support worker. But in my world of mahi, it's about getting into the policy. So for me, diagnosis is critical for Pacifica whānau that isn't working because we don't often come to light until much later. And so we operate on a collectivism thinking before we get to that point where we just come straight to the NASC or into RA and all these other processes. So there's got to be a focus there, which is exactly what Whai Macarena touched on in terms of the social. It's not just one illness. Yeah, we're dealing with mate wareware. However, there are other impacts. So with the funding that's coming, kei te pai, hopefully it's not just a tokenistic approach to doing things. There's so many things that fall out. So I acknowledge Shireen in terms of your kōrero around other opportunities, but I don't want it to just be that. We need real depth detail of what's going to happen from here. What is working from our team in Wellington and that was shared by Wendy, I'm sure she can tag into this, is that a presence, whether you're leadership governance or kaimahi or whānau, actually a presence is working well in Poreroa of having Debbie go into the space and actually saying, so whānau operate kanohi ki te kanohi. That should be what's informing all this stuff that people are writing in Wellington or writing RFPs, whatever. So I just want to make sure that that stuff is heard. And Wendy, I'm sorry I didn't give it as much mana as it should have, but feel free to jump in here because what connects Pacifica is the moana. So preference is tangata moana. And we alongside our tangata whenua absolutely agree that the mahi that's been done into tiriti obligations also underpin the values for Pacifica. So that mahi it started, well done, keep it going. So for me, that's probably it. Hopefully, Stephen, that's within your time frame. But in saying that, I just want to give the opportunity to my sisters, Luana and Amy and Wendy, because that's how we work. Please do not change. Okay, so if there's anything, guys, you can jump in. But if not, kapai, I'm going to be here for the long haul.
Thank you.
Great
so
job.
much.
Absolutely hit the nail on the head.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, listening to both of you so far, and we had the rest to come. What we'll do is do a transcript of this feedback from the interest groups, and we'll put that together and send it to the leadership group and to the commissioners as part of this process. So they will get your feedback. We didn't have anyone in rural perspectives today, but young onset dementia, could you talk now?
Kia ora koutou, I'm Bridget Ryan. We didn't pick someone to speak, but I'll self-nominate. We also didn't get time to actually discuss the most important thing because we spent the whole time introducing ourselves. But certainly there's a strong awareness of the different needs of people living with young onset dementia and their supporters. What was really exciting is that there's a great breadth of experience and expertise within that group, and we're all really looking forward to being connected as a community of interest.
Thanks, Bridget. Jill, no, we didn't have anyone from the ID community, although there were people who sent apologies from that community who couldn't get here because of the storm. Age residential care, can you talk?
Kia ora, yes, I'm Tahi. I was note taker for a group of very impressive people working in age residential care with great clinical background. So some of our highlights were around the funding structure, not having a person-centered approach, and also not being consistent across different localities and areas of the country. There was a concern about Interact not being client-focused, being an imported system brought from Canada to Aotearoa, and what questions we have that are the part of Interact that do not focus on health outcomes and equity outcomes for people. There was feedback about consistency in legal frameworks around enduring powers of attorney, how to protect people to go into care and better support people, particularly dealing with hospitals and the issue of bed blocking in hospitals while people wait for enduring powers of attorney to come through. There was some feedback about a home-based, community-based model of care rather than an institutional model to support people needing person-centered care for dementia. There were concerns about very few, going back to the Interact point, registered nurses being available, particularly at smaller age residential care facilities, to actually do Interact and collect data on what's happening with it. And yeah, again, just points about that need for legal reform around effective decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Respite care next.
Kia ora, we didn't vote a note taker, but I'll talk. The overarching theme for our little group was accessibility to respite care, in particular dementia level care. We learned from our colleagues at Eldernet that they have the software available to manage any ring-fenced respite beds, and they have made that available to Canterbury, who apparently have 10 beds ring-fenced for respite, and the occupancy on those rooms went from 60% to 90%, and they're able to actually pre-book in advance and provide care, which just sounds amazing. We don't have anything like that in our region. In the Hutt Valley, and it would just be amazing. From the point of view of a service user, family members expressed the angst in needing to, I guess, chase a bed yourself as an already burdened caregiver, and having some better form of booking system would be just truly amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The person from Navigation Group.
Cooney, so you mentioned New Zealand. Our group, the area for improvement, we'll have 2 points there. So the critical part for navigation is actually around education of the workforce, and especially in the primary care sector, so they can be actively supporting the person living with dementia for navigating early diagnosis and then ongoing access for support systems. And the critical importance of navigation being fully resourced as part of an integral core national service model, and that the approach then with the right funding through a national model would help to ensure addressing inequities and the current postcode lottery, which sees some areas having no funding support for navigation and others being reasonably well supported for the navigation. So education, funding, integral part of a national service model.
Thank you. The person from Community Support.
Thanks, I'll speak on behalf. We spoke about, first of all, most of our discussion was about how proud we are of our organisations and what we're doing to support the community in flexibility of service, ability to innovate, collaboration, and the focus being put on the community. Two actions that we spoke about or needed clarification on was the confusion on whether daily activities, respite, and that particular community help is available for funding and to what level. And also the other one that we didn't discuss, but I was quick to, was how families of loved ones living with dementia are supported, given the impact dementia has on informal care and the wider community.
Thank you. Dementia-friendly communities.
Hi, I'm going to speak on our behalf. I'm Chair of Alzheimer's New Zealand, and our vision is a dementia-friendly New Zealand. So it was a good topic for me to choose. So I just have to find my notes. So we think at the moment things that are working well are our Dementia Friends program, that people can learn more about dementia in the community people. Doesn't necessarily lead on to dementia friendly businesses, but getting the knowledge out there for everybody in the community is really important. Two things that we think should be improved is the city councils need to make their cities and towns more age friendly, which means that they'll also be more dementia friendly, and also healthcare has to be more dementia friendly, particularly secondary care and people with dementia going into EDs and how very distressing that is, and also making primary care more dementia aware as well, which was covered by somebody else as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Therapeutic approaches, including CST, that group.
Kia ora koutou, Catherine Hall from Alzheimer's New Zealand. I got nominated as the spokesperson probably because I talked too much. We had a small but perfectly formed group with people with an interest in CST, speech language therapy, voice arts, diversional therapy, occupational therapy, and biomedical therapeutics. So a wide range of different ways of thinking about therapeutic interventions. Of course, that just scratches the surface of what we already know about and what's possible. The key, one thing that needs to happen is that those kinds of interventions and opportunities need to be available for everyone across the country, wherever they live, and considered to be a core part of the service offering. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be money associated with that for the right capacity, right capability for the service delivery element, but also for the ongoing research to be able to demonstrate what works into the future, because there will be more developments in that space.
Thanks, Catherine. And there was a group of for other people to talk in general about dementia. Is there someone from that group?
Kia ora. I'm Elizabeth Duke. I'm half the group. The other half is Emma Fromings. And we're very excited because we discovered we had a common interest and virtually campaign. I'm on the Alzheimer's New Zealand Advisory Group as someone living with mild cognitive impairment. Emma is a health improvement practitioner in a medical practice. I'm concerned that there should be much more attention given to people who are not yet in a state to be diagnosed as dementia, and perhaps won't be, because we're the threat hanging over the nation, apart from anything else, and that there should be more opportunities for peer-to-peer support in general. And Emma said, well, in our practice, if people are experiencing trouble with their brains, they come to me, and I look at both what they need as individuals, and I enable people to be in groups. So our joint recommendation is that there should be far more health improvement practitioners spread around primary care in the country, which would, among other things, relieve the load on GPs.
Thank you. That's everybody. I'm so sorry we had to ask you to give such pressured feedback. We'll try and avoid such a situation in the future, because it's incredibly difficult with such comprehensive issues. And you've given us great summaries, just amazing. It's obvious that the special interest groups are going to be a wonderful resource for the ecosystem. And it's the New Zealand Dementia Foundation's great honour to help you to coordinate that activity. Now I'll hand over, that's the end of our meeting. I'll hand over to Teresa and Macarena to farewell everybody.
Oh, kia ora. Can I just say thank you everybody for attending today. It's been a fantastic meeting. I wasn't here for the first one, so it's just lovely to meet you all. I hope that Teresa and I, mainly Teresa, has provided some clarity on the process and the decisions that we have made so far as the leadership and advisory group. It's been difficult because there is so much to do, as we've all said, in such a small amount of funding, relatively speaking, in which to get those things done. But anyway, I particularly want to thank everybody from the special interest group. As a researcher sitting at the university, it's just wonderful to hear what's going on out in the community, and to hear the amazing work that you guys are doing. And it's really very humbling to hear that. I do want to thank Shireen and Stephen for hosting us, and for just making everything work so smoothly, like clockwork. Actually, I'm really impressed. And I do want to say what an honour it is to be a part of the Dementia Mati Wareware Leadership and Advisory Group. So I'll just pass over to Teresa. Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi. Kia ora, Macarena. Just to quickly remind people that the commissioning process for the projects will be a two-stage process, so registration of interest, and that will be coming out in early March. So the Shireen, as the Secretariat and whatnot, will be providing you with some advice about that process. And then there's the RFP process. So we are going to, the Mati Wareware Leadership and Advisory Group are going to send our advice based on your feedback to Whatuora and to Akawhai, and they will either accept our advice or not, but they're going to be quite transparent about their process, and we'll then be able to feed back to you about what advice they've taken. So thank you very much for your participation. And so just to close, kia inoi tātou, kia whakaaeria te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, haumie puie Tahi ki. Ka kite.
Kia ora, Teresa. Ka kite, everybody.